Washington state law says people served with protection orders must surrender their guns to police. It's meant to protect domestic violence victims from abusers who have firearms.
But a King 5 investigation reveals hundreds of abusers out there who never surrender and simply ignore that law. Tonight, Chris Ingalls shows you a new program that should keep domestic abuse victims safer.
And every single time it starts out the same. They're sweet, they're loving.
A string of bad relationships came to an end when Michael Thomas, a minister and ex-police officer, entered the picture. Or at least that's what Crystal Velasco thought.
When they're sorry, they'll come back. They'll be sweet, they're nice, tell you they love you, bring you flowers, tell you they're sorry, and you believe it.
Things changed a few months into the relationship, according to this protection order filed in King County Court. Crystal said Thomas punched me in the head, pulled my hair, and suffocated me in a chokehold in beatings that started when she became pregnant with Thomas's child.
Things are starting to get more violent because now you have a child, now they think they own you. I was scared the whole time filling out that restraining order. I was worried that when he finds out, what is he going to do?
Even more scary, the ex-cop and avid hunter had a closet full of guns.
I don't know what he's capable of. He's made severe threats.
People served with protection orders are barred by law from owning or possessing guns. But the King 5 investigators found enforcement of that law is rare.
All rise.
In King County Court, accused abusers are ordered to appear either with a receipt showing they've surrendered their firearms to police, or this signed document swearing they don't have any guns. On this day, only 3 of 34 people summoned show up to face the judge. We reviewed King County Court data showing abusers in 47% of cases, nearly half, simply don't respond to the weapons surrender order. It's appalling to attorneys who represent abuse victims in court, like William Braun.
I see today's situation as playing Russian roulette with the lives of victims of domestic violence.
On the March day that Michael Thomas appeared for his firearms hearing, he told the judge he had no guns, a conversation recorded by the court.
There was an allegation that you had a handgun or shotgun.
And we've had a handgun years ago, and she never seen any handguns on me.
Thomas signed this form swearing, "I do not have any firearms." But the one day that Michael Thomas appeared in court was unlike any other at the King County Courthouse. That's because Chris Anderson, head of the domestic violence unit of the Seattle City Attorney's Office, was sitting in the courtroom.
We walked out of the courtroom, called the victim. She said, "He has firearms." And I said, "Well, how do you know that?" She says, "Well, they're right here. I have them in my house."
Anderson's call to Crystal would never have happened on a routine day. But in March, Anderson was part of an experiment by the criminal justice system to see how many abusers flaunt the law prohibiting gun possession.
It showed me how blatant people can be when they don't believe that anyone's following up on this, and that was the case for many, many years.
Crystal supplied photos of Thomas's guns, and authorities obtained his hunting license, enough evidence to get a search warrant to enter Thomas's Maple Valley home.
We found a Glock 40 that was in a safe. We found 2 shotguns and 2 hunting rifles and a hunting bow, all of which he stood in front of the court and said, "I don't have any guns and none of them belong to me."
Getting those guns is key because statistics show more than half of domestic violence homicides are committed by people prohibited from owning firearms. 42% of domestic violence murder victims are children, and more than half of all mass shootings are related to domestic violence.
These are the cases that are keeping us up at night.
It wasn't just Michael Thomas. Of the handful of others that actually showed up to court on that March day, 2 other men are also accused of lying to the judge about their guns.
How many guns did you identify just in that one day that did not go reported?
11.
11 guns.
Right.
All guns that are now in the hands of police, with Thomas and the others charged with perjury and unlawful possession of firearms, charges to which Thomas has pleaded not guilty.
What did you think when they told you they'd taken all those guns out of his house?
I felt so relieved that at least I have that not to worry about. Now I have to stop. I have to make sure it doesn't keep going on, and I have to keep moving forward because my kids need me.
How important is it to get guns out of the hands of domestic abusers?
Oh, Tabitha would be alive today. That should be proof right there.
In the past decade in Washington, nearly 400 domestic violence victims have been shot and killed by their abusers.
But back in May, the King 5 investigators exposed how a law meant to take guns away from those same abusers is actually failing.
Now, Chris Ingalls shows us how a new task force is trying to turn that around.
All rise. Superior Court is now in session. The Honorable Jean Mitchell presiding.
There's an allegation that you had a weapon in your waistband. There's an allegation that you possessed a gun last year.
The petitioner indicated that he twice threatened to kill her with a gun, pointed it at her, and cocked it in front of her children.
What's happening in this King County courtroom is leading to more of these ending up in the police property room. These firearms belong to accused domestic abusers, many of whom tried to hide them from authorities.
So all these guns were recovered either from a search warrant or by people that served the protection orders.
Sergeant Dorothy Kim of the Seattle Police Department's Domestic Violence Unit is part of a new task force hunting for guns that would have previously gone undetected.
What's the likelihood that any of these guns would have ended up in police hands?
None. None. A year ago, none of these guns would have been recovered. We would never have done the search warrant.
This is just about whether you have the guns. That's the only thing this is about.
God is my witness, I don't have it, ma'am.
Okay.
Firearms hearings, like this one, specifically target people who are served with protection orders. The court has ordered them to cease all contact with someone, typically a family member or boyfriend or girlfriend, who filed for the court's protection.
I've tried everything to prove that I don't have any firearms.
The judge must ensure that people served with protection orders are following the part of the law that requires them to turn their guns over to police. That law exists because of the increased danger that domestic violence victims face if their abuser has access to a gun. They're 5 times more likely to be murdered.
Then all of a sudden, I get this phone call. He shot her.
That terrible call to Kathy Gock last year is an example. Her 33-year-old daughter Tabitha was shot in Federal Way, allegedly by her abusive ex-boyfriend.
Apparently, the gun was in a closet, up in his closet in a shoebox.
Experts say getting guns out of an abuser's hands early is key because victims are in the greatest danger right when they leave them. Tabitha's ex, Rashid Mitchell, is accused of murdering her 12 days after she received a protection order against him.
How important is it to get guns out of the hands of domestic abusers?
Oh, Tabitha would be alive today. That should be proof right there. Tabitha would have been alive today.
Yet a King 5 investigation in May found the courtroom for firearms hearings nearly empty day after day, even though the calendar posted in the hallway showed dozens of accused abusers scheduled to appear. Our review of court records showed that nearly half of those people simply did not respond to the court's weapons surrender order. The law barring them from possessing guns was being ignored.
And if we do have contact with the victim to get more specific information about when she last saw the firearms.
Chris Anderson, who runs the domestic violence unit in the Seattle City Attorney's Office, has long been concerned about lax enforcement of weapons surrender orders. After our stories this summer, he helped convince King County Executive Dow Constantine and Seattle City Council to pledge $1 million to create the task force that is now piling up guns from weapons surrender orders.
She indicated in the petition that he has a handgun, but he keeps in a specific place in the house.
The police and prosecutors on the Regional Firearms Task Force interview victims and witnesses and even obtain search warrants if needed to get an abuser's guns.
He had threatened her with a gun. The firearms are usually loaded. There's been threats to kill, strangulation, rape, stalking.
Instead of relying on the word of accused abusers, the court now hears evidence collected by the task force.
We also have information that there are 78 other guns at the property where he resides.
Our mission is to ensure that defendants who are subject to protection orders are turning in their firearms and reducing risk to victims.
The result, the rate of guns turned over or seized by police has more than quadrupled since the task force started enforcing the surrender law.
Do you have a gun? Oh no, I don't have a gun. I mean, who's going to say, oh yeah, I have a gun, I'll give it to you? But they need to go further. They need to investigate it. They need to find out from the victim if there's a gun.
So that kind of investigation is happening now in King County, but probably not anywhere else in Washington. In fact, task force members think there aren't many places in the nation that do this, even though possessing guns when you've been served with a domestic violence protection order is against federal law.